Check, check, check. Is this thing on? Welcome in. Today's movie we're going to be discussing is This Thing On, starring Will Arnett and Laura Dern. We're going to cover a little bit of the promotional aspect of the movie and also the overall movie experience. We're going to be talking about the posters, the trailer, audience reaction, the audio and the music, visuals, and the overall characters, and a little bit of story, and end it with a final review at a score out of 5. So hope you enjoy. Remember to hit that like and subscribe. I'll be doing movie reviews throughout the year of all the movies I see in the theater. Since I watch a lot of movies, I have a history of watching pretty much, I wouldn't say every movie, but a good majority of the movies in the theater. And last year I watched 71 movies in the theater, I believe was my total. I have a video about it. It's very long. But first up, we're going to discuss the poster and the trailer for the kind of promotional aspect. I know there's more to promoting a movie outside of those things, but I really enjoyed the visual medium of those. The poster itself, very run-of-the-mill, very two-tone, a lot of black and whites, and very Oscar bait movie, covering the applause of different festivals the movie played at, along with taglines from different reviewers and things like that. So nothing really impressive about that, and I've noticed that being more of the case over the last 15-20 years in the poster art world. There's not a lot of creativity when it comes to those. They have a lot of trailers that look, not a lot of trailers, a lot of posters that look very similar. And then the trailer really sold me from when Will Arnett kind of walks up to the microphone, tries to do some comedy, and he is not very good at it. But the movie trailer kind of goes into, okay, what's this movie going to be about? Well, it's a guy getting a divorce. He's middle-aged, not knowing what he's doing with his life, decides to get into stand-up comedy. And so you follow him and his wife, their family, their friends, in regards to how is this breakup or the split that they're going through impacts the people around them, and how it impacts them themselves and how they grow as characters. It's one of those trailers where it kind of gives away too much in the trailer, but it's also based on a true story, so it's hard not to spoil anything. Movie experience, audience reaction, and what time I saw it. I saw it Sunday, 1:15 show. Was a mixed crowd of all ages, and it was decently full. I'd say it was probably maybe half full. It was one of the smaller auditoriums, and they had it in a couple screens. And then the jokes that were in the movie throughout it, whether it was any of the comedy bits or just different interactions with the family, landed pretty well with the audience. So overall, the movie experience was great. No annoying people in the audience, which I will discuss in future reviews if that happens. And it's usually in horror movies that's the case, especially PG-13 horror movies. But I digress. Audio and music. One thing I realized kind of towards the end of the movie was it's a very dialogue-heavy movie, and I love that they didn't really shoehorn a lot of music or score into the movie. It's here and there. It's very subtle. It's not very in your face. There is kind of a musical, not a musical, but there's kind of a music aspect in one scene of the movies that's basically his kids learning some instruments. But outside of that, the music was very subtle, and I think that helped the movie in regards to the dialogue and conversations that happen throughout it, especially in some of the comedy club scenes where it's more of like, how's the crowd interacting with him? How is he growing as a comedian? How are other people seeing him and reacting to the stories or even the jokes that he's telling? So overall, great audio. You can hear everybody talking, and I know that's been a big thing over the last few years, especially with Christopher Nolan movies, who's notorious for burying the dialogue in half his films. And then visually, I'm not really going to talk about special effects. It's more of a dramedy type film, so special effects don't really play too much part of that. What I enjoyed visually about the movie is that there was kind of a contrast between the city scenes and then the suburban scenes, and I love that they provided kind of a different tone. Like the suburban scenes were kind of a little bit a little bit washed out, a little bit more grays, whereas you had a bit more saturation in the city scenes, especially in the nightclubs and the comedy clubs. Visually, it looked great with the camera work, especially in some of the comedy scenes where he's on stage talking to the crowd, kind of giving you that perspective of the crowd and both him. So overall, visuals fantastic. Characters, unlike in Marty Supreme, which I also saw over the weekend, that one had a few characters that I didn't really feel brought much to the movie overall, and they kind of were there just to be there. Whereas in this movie, outside of one couple that's like friends of the main characters, I thought most of the characters kind of had their plays, kind of help kind of move the story along, or had a reason to be there. For the instance, a lot of some comedians show up in the comedy scenes, and the interactions between Will Arnett's character and these characters is fantastic, as he's learning to understand kind of how the comedians work, how this club works, how some of them go to many different shows to work on their material and hone it over different sessions. So overall, characters were great. The two leads were fantastic. Will Arnett and Laura Dern were great with their two characters. Very down to earth, very real. And that is basically what this movie is. I would almost call it a romantic comedy, even though it's more of a dramedy. But it's one of those romantic comedies that's kind of more real and not kind of fantasy-esque as a lot of romantic comedies are. And then the story. So basically it's just, Will Arnett's character, Alex, him and his wife decide to split mutually. And the story is basically following what happens to them, along with, their family and friends who are very close to them, and how this both brings them together and kind of pulls them apart a little bit. So it's it's one of those, I want to say coming of age stories, because they're both middle-aged people. It's more of like, okay, what happens at this point in your life? You have a family, you have kids, but you also have this aspiration for other things that happens to come up. Both of their characters, Will Arnett's character gets into comedy on the whim because of their breakup, and then his wife also has passions that she once gave up in the future for the family. And so a lot of the story revolves around them growing as people and seeing how they kind of drifted apart. So overall, it was a very kind of down-to-earth movie. Really enjoyed it. A lot of the comedy was great. The acting was fantastic. It's one of those movies that if you look at the trailer, you could think it might be kind of depressing, but I would say it's definitely not depressing as a film as some might think. But overall, I'd give Is This Thing On 4 stars. Definitely fantastic. Definitely recommend watching it in the theater. And until next time, have a good day.